Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the third annual Middle East Banking Forum, brought to you by the UAE Banks Federation in association with The Banker magazine and Financial Times Live. My name is Michael Imson. I'm a contributing editor at The Banker, which is part of the Financial Times Group. Thank you all very much for joining us today. I'm pleased to be here again, exactly a year ago to the day since the 2014 forum. Last year, we attracted around 250 senior bankers and industry observers to discuss the current state of play of banking in the region and what the future holds. This year, looks like we've got even more delegates, probably around 300. The main topic of today's event is, again, innovation. We covered innovation last year. We're covering it again, slightly different angle. We're taking a much more global outlook than before, as you can see from our speaker roster. Yes, of course, we have distinguished experts from the UAE and other parts of the Middle East, such as His Excellency Abdul Aziz Al Gharer, Chairman of the UAE Banks Federation. And we also have His Excellency Mubarak Rashid Al Mansouri, Governor of the UAE Central Bank. And a sprinkling of bankers and consultants from the UAE, Oman, Lebanon, and Kuwait. But we also have speakers from other parts of the world. We have Scott Bales, who is our keynote speaker, and Neil Cross from DBS Bank. Both are based in Singapore. We have Anthony Brown, the Chief Executive Officer of the British Bankers Association, and we have a variety of other bankers and experts from the UK, Brussels, Germany, and the Netherlands. Those are the speakers. Let me tell you about the topics, all of which have the underlying theme or the dominant theme of innovation. Our speakers will be talking about digital disruption, the digital disruption that banking innovation is creating, how new entrants are upsetting the status quo and making life difficult for traditional banks. They'll be talking also about virtual currencies, including cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and the blockchain technology that underpins it. And they'll be talking about the innovation laboratories and the accelerator programs that banks have set up. And they'll be talking about the global banking threats that all banks face these days, such as the burden of financial regulation, the risk of political interference, adverse economic developments, and of course, cybercrime. No conference today, no banking conference today is complete without a session on cybercrime. I'd just like to say a few words about our three hosts, your three hosts today. First of all, the UAE Banks Federation. Many of you in the audience work for banks that are members of the UBF, but if you're not a member, you may not realize that the Federation has been in existence now for 33 years, and it has around 50 member banks. I think the precise total is 49. Not just UAE domiciled banks, but many foreign banks with substantial operations here. The Federation's mission is to develop the banking sector here, to represent the interests of member banks, and to promote the exchange of ideas not only locally but across the region, hence the reason for this conference. Your second host is FT Live, the FT's conference division. We run around 200 events a year for the newspaper and the various magazines in the FT Group's stable, the Banker being one of them. So the Banker's your third host. We've been published in London since 1926. So next year is our 90th anniversary. I haven't been working for the Banker all that time, as you could probably tell, but I am getting on a bit. I've been working for the Banker for about 12 years. And in that time, we've covered the Middle East pretty thoroughly. We do the top 100 banks article and table rankings every October. For example, this year, it shows that the Arab banks put in a very robust performance. Aggregate Tier 1 capital, the main measure that we use of Arab banks, increased by just over 11% in this year's survey compared with the previous year. Balance sheets expanded by 10.5% to bring the total to $2.4 trillion. And profitability increased by 13.5%. And the standout banks in terms of profitability were in Egypt, which increased profits by 25%, and here in the UAE, which increased their profits on average by 24%. And we also do, every year, every November, the top Islamic financial institutions. So outside there, you'll see copies of the Banker, and the insert there, the report, is 30-odd pages long. That will be very interesting reading for you. It shows that although the global market for Sharia-compliant finance has declined by 8% globally in the year compared with last year. And that's measured by total assets. There's still plenty to be positive about. For example, the lion's share of the global decline in assets in Islamic finance was accounted for by Iran, which is the #1 Islamic banking centre. And most of its decline was accounted for by a fall in the currency's exchange rate against the US dollar. If you look at other countries, the GCC in particular actually, Sharia-compliant assets of the GCC countries together grew by 14%. So that bucked the international trend, which, as I say, was skewed by Iran. So exactly 50%, according to our survey, half of all global assets in Islamic finance are generated here. That's quite some achievement. Before I invite our first speaker up, I just need to go through a couple of housekeeping notes for delegates and speakers. First of all, mobile phones. You can leave them on these days, but please have them on silent. We don't want to disrupt the speakers or the panelists. Questions and answers. There'll be plenty of time for Q&As during the panel sessions and after each, or most of the presentations, not all of them. Speakers and panelists, please, I have actually mentioned this to some of them, but in the next half an hour, when you find an appropriate moment, please go over to the corner, speakers and panelists. If you haven't already got your mic, I've got a lapel mic here, as well as this thing. We all need them, apart from the governor and the chairman of the UBF. You're just going to be using these. You do not need to get mic'd up, but everybody else, please do. Feedback questionnaires, please complete those. We'd like to know what you think of the event and the speakers and the panelists. Timekeeping, I'm going to do my best to keep to time. I've allocated myself 10 minutes for these opening remarks. I think I'm over by about 1 minute, so we're in good territory there so far. On that note, it's now time for me to hand you over to the chairman of the UAE Banks Federation. Would you please welcome His Excellency Abdul Aziz Al Ghareer. Sorry, I haven't got my glasses on. I was pointing to the wrong chairman. I should have been pointing over there.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Your Excellency Mubarak bin Rashid Al Mansouri, Governor of UAE Central Bank, dear guest, colleague, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'd like to welcome you all to the third UAE Banks Federation Middle East Banking Forum. We are very pleased to have you all with us this morning. As you know, the theme of our conference this year is Leaders in Innovation. It is no coincidence that this echoes our conference last year theme, which we looked at innovation in a digitally connected world. We believe our willingness and ability to innovate is crucial for our industry, to our survival as banks, to our future well-being, as well as that of the people, institutions, companies we serve. Innovation comes in all sizes and shapes. It can help companies be more efficient. It can help them break a new ground and enter a new area of business. It can also be a major challenge for some of them. But such challenge should be welcomed. They form the basis of our modern day evolution. In the most recent Global Index of Innovation, Cornell University, in partnership with World Intellectual Property Organization and INSEAD, said that innovation-driven growth is no longer the prerogative of high-income countries alone. Tangible examples of Effective innovation policy are being increasingly undertaken by developing countries. The report adds that not even a decade ago, many low and medium income countries were not in the innovation map, but they are now increasingly are part of the more globalized innovation landscape. Their experience holds lessons for other countries and the global distribution of innovation more broadly. It underlined the fact that tomorrow's world will be very different to today's, and that the future is not far away as it used to be. This is a direct relevance to here in the UAE and the region. The UAE government has adopted a very proactive and enlightened view of innovation and has encouraged both private and government sector, public sector, not only to embrace it, but to demonstrate it in everything they do. In this year, the UAE Year of Innovation, the banking industry is under the spotlight to show what we can do to support this vision. Our aim in all of this is to provide a better service, to provide a better service to our customer, to better grow our business, and to more broadly contribute to the economic development and prosperity of our country and the well-being of our people in our region. That, I know it sounds obvious to say, but in such a challenging economic times, particularly for the banking industry, it has a much greater resonance than usual. We are pleased. Our recent independent survey on customer trust in the banks working in the UAE has come so positively, both in absolute term and relative to the other international market. But the survey also shows us that we cannot take customer trust for granted, and that's still a lot to be done. Our service are tailored to what they want, and our service should be priced fairly and transparently. I hope innovation will help us achieve this. Finally, I cannot finish without extending a special note of thanks and appreciation to our central bank and the team working in the central bank, giving us support for the UAE banking industry, and they have done a fantastic job in their prudent policy here. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for attending our conference, and I wish you all a stimulating and enjoyable event. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for those remarks. I think the standout point there was that you can't take customer trust for granted. You need to provide the services that customers want, and innovation can help. I now have great pleasure in announcing our next speaker, the Governor of the Central Bank of the UAE. Would you please welcome His Excellency Mubarak Rashid Khamis Al Mansouri.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning to you all. Your Excellency Abdulaziz Al Gharir, Chairman of UAE Banks Federation, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be with you today in this important gathering. I take this opportunity to thank the UAE Banks Federation for the excellent organization. To start off, I would like to stress on the remarkable development of the banking sector in the UAE, which kept pace with the needs of the economy, particularly in the aftermath of the global financial crisis. For your information, our banking sector is the largest in the region, with total assets that have reached 2.4 trillion dirhams. Two major factors that have contributed to this exceptional development of the banking sector in the UAE, which are particular to the banking sector. Of course, I want to also mention it is the UAE leadership and openness that has greatly enhanced doing business in our country. But let's turn to the factors related to the banking sector. First is the steady customer deposits, which reached 1.4 trillion dirhams in a world of continued volatility. And second is a strong capital base, as the average capital adequacy ratio is hovering around 18%, exceeding our regulatory requirement. These strengths allowed our banking sector to expand credit despite a noticeable slowdown in deposit growth. This was made possible thanks to a satisfactory, albeit tightening liquidity situation for the banks. Therefore, banks continue to perform their vital role as a financial intermediary, providing the needed financing to non-oil activities. Noteworthy in this connection is the remarkable success of Islamic Sharia compliant banks, whose assets have reached 452 billion dirhams, which is 19% of the total, while their financing has reached 300 billion dirhams, which makes 22% of total bank credit. The importance of the stability of our financial system cannot be overemphasized. Along with the major stakeholders, the central bank is closely monitoring the financial soundness indicators for the banking sector to make sure that the potential vulnerabilities are identified and that appropriate measures are taken on time to hedge against risk that could escalate to full-blown crisis, as our experience have taught us. In this connection, it's indeed encouraging sign that the ratio of non-performing loans has gone down from 8.6% in the second half of 2014 to just 6.3% as of September 2015. And I want to stop here a little bit, because if we adjust this for write-offs, this percentage, I think, will be half, so around maybe 3 to 4%. So we are, I think, we have achieved a good level, but we are seeking to hopefully reduce it. I know it's a bit, might be challenging this year, but let's see. Continued improvement in the balance sheet of banks increased the lending to stable resources ratio from 85.2% at the end of last year to 88.1% at the end of September. Despite the recent tightening of liquidity, banks have managed to accommodate demand for credit, capitalizing on ample liquidity they had accumulated. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to turn now to the challenges that our banking sector may be facing in the period to come. First, it is the impact of global economic slowdown on the non-oil activities in the UAE, necessitating our prudent measures to counter potential slowdown in economic activities. Second is the reduction in the oil price, which led to a fall in government revenues and may trigger further fiscal consolidation, albeit at a gradual pace, to preserve priority spending in support of non-oil growth. Third is the further tightening in the bank liquidity due to slowdown in customer deposits. The central bank welcomes the recent diversification of funding sources like issuance of bonds, sukuks, and Sukuks to finance growth of banks' credit. Fourth is the lift-off of the interest rate in the US, with a growing likelihood that this will commence in December. The immediate impact on our side will be an appropriate adjustment of our CD rates, especially at the short end, as we expect the Federal Reserve to oversee a gradual adjustment to its policy rate over the coming years. Also, a gradual adjustment to the UAE policy rate would ensure the stability of the exchange rate peg, which is our continued commitment. Fifth is the so-called bank de-risking, which has become a serious obstacle for all international transactions in US dollars, with the implications for banks and exchange houses. In this connection, it's noteworthy that we have capitalized on inputs provided by the UAE Banks Federation and have maintained high level of consultation with our partners in the GCC as well as the international partners. To be specific, at the end of last month, we debated the subject at the forum organized by the Arab Monetary Fund in Abu Dhabi with the collaboration of the MENA Financial Stability Board and the IMF. Then, early this month, we raised these concerns with the US authorities at a high-level event of the US Gulf Public-Private Banking Dialogue in New York. We made it very clear that de-risking has proven to be wholesale and indiscriminate to our financial institutions, and that it is unduly hurting remittances from our large expatriate workforce to their home countries. We asked that concerns over compliance requirements need to be communicated more effectively to the correspondent banks, which in turn need to better understand the customer base and the risk profiles for banks and exchange houses operating in our country and in the GCC at large, and act accordingly. While we made it clear that we are working to enhance our capacity for compliance in order to provide further assurances to correspondent banks abroad, we also asked the US officials to help us in training and capacity building to satisfy any remaining concerns and help foster mutual confidence. We do hope that these efforts will pay off and will start seeing some tangible results in the near future to ease these constraints that have threatened financial inclusion. Ladies and gentlemen, I now turn to the third and last part of the speech regarding the priorities for the banking sector in the UAE in the coming period. Namely, it is paramount importance to facilitate access to finance for small and medium enterprises, which is an important sector, by coordinating our efforts with those of other stakeholders. In the UAE, banks could play a significant role in this development of the SME sector. The central bank aims to work with these stakeholders, including the banks, with the following goals in mind. Increase institutional support so that the SMEs will be in a better position to deal with markets, with market forces, and have better access to marketing channels, domestic as well as for export. Increase capacity building at the SMEs to help them offer better documentation to banks, consistent with internationally accepted accounting practices. Set up a well-designed and credible credit guarantee schemes in order to decrease risks of default for potential lenders that may jeopardize financial stability. Press ahead with the bankruptcy law for the stability of the SME sector. Related to the above, and as a second priority in the near term, we aim to support bank financing for trade with the goal to improve UAE competitiveness and therefore access foreign markets. This is crucial for our drive towards further diversification out of oil and natural gas by laying the foundation for further private sector development and job creation for UAE nationals. Lastly, and I think according to the theme of the conference, which is the innovation, we started, and this is in discussion with the UAE Banks Federation, the digital payment project. And this is an important project. We think this is going to help financial inclusion, and the central bank is really very determined to really work with all banks so that this technology is used at all levels. And of course, today I think you're talking about cybercrime, which is I think one of the threats that we have for this technology to spread. So myself or my team will be interested to learn more about it. So in conclusion, I hope you will enjoy your conference and the deliberations, and wish you best of luck. Thank you very much.